Hi, this is Ptolemy Pruden. Welcome to this edition of Common Sense Defense. We're talking about today the beauty of the Arleigh Burke class destroyers. So, this episode is going to be discussing the importance of building three DDG 51s, as we call them, or Arleigh Burkes, per year, as opposed to the current 1.5. So, the Arleigh Burkes are platforms. They're destroyers that have been around, I think, about 15, 20 years, and they have a displacement or a displacement of between 8,200 tons and 9,700 tons, and they are really the workhorse of the fleet. And so they have a speed of about 30 knots, and they have the platforms that are surface to air missile based systems, which are the SM-2, the SM-3. Those are different types of missiles, and the SM-6. And so I want to go through some of the nuts and bolts of the Arleigh Burkes, and I just want to talk about today why we need more of those platforms. So the Arleigh Burke is built in two different locations in our country. Bath Iron Works, which is up north, and the Bath is up in Connecticut, and some part of is we're in Connecticut, part of it's in Rhode Island. The people come from both of those locations, and then also Huntington Ingalls, which is in Mississippi. Um, so the Arleigh Burke is the same platform as produced at two different locations. Um, One of the things that we have been looking at over the last year and a half to 2 years is that the Navy has been a little somewhat tepid. I guess tepid is a word in trying to produce two per year, and the capacity is there for two per year, and so they've kind of been forced or pushed to make sure that they produce two Arleigh Burkes per year. Um, a lot of that has to do with the money being there for other platforms that the Navy wants to do. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the Navy is looking for the next generation of destroyer coming online, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. That platform, we look forward to it, but that platform has not even finished development. That platform is going to take 5, 6 years of research development, building out the first examples. I mean, so you're not going to look at having um, a new destroyer probably 2032, 2033, that we will get the first one on, that we'll get the first one up, out and deployed. That's a long time. It's a decade away minimally. And so the Arleigh Burke is um, best used now, and we need to be projecting to use the Arleigh Burke as a workforce for the rest of this decade. So that concept of reducing the construction of the Arleigh Burke platform is not a good idea. There's a couple things. One, we have all the workers. You know, Huntington Ingalls has like 10,000, 12,000 workers down there in Mississippi. And if you reduce the number of platforms that you need to build, then they don't have any destroyers to build. So they're only going to be building the LPD 17 and some of the large um, landing helicopter assault platforms. And so, what's going to end up happening if they truncate the LPD 17 next year, the following year, then they're only going to be building one landing assault ship and no LPD 17s and one or two uh, Arleigh Burkes, which means they're going to have to reduce the size of the workforce down in Huntington Ingalls out of Mississippi, and those people are going to have to be laid off, fired, or what have you. That directly impacts our national security. So minimally we need to make sure that the Navy is getting two Arleigh Burkes per year, and I am proposing that we open up a third production on the Arleigh Burkes to make sure that those facilities stay operational, and to assure that we're building cutting edge platforms and are not losing those platforms numerically. So three Arleigh Burkes per year over a span of 5 years gives our workforce stability. They know, okay, I've got some plenty of work coming on for the next 5, 7, 8 years. I've got plenty of work coming on for my family, for my future, and I can kind of maneuver. So when you cut cut back orders and are tepid on what you want to produce, then that puts insecurity in your workforce. We need, now as ever before, we need a workforce that's stable, strong, educated, capable, confident that they're going to have work down the road. And so that's why I'm proposing that we build 3 Arleigh Burkes per year. That is so critical, and it's just going to help our country in a major way, because we can have those platforms as that are available down the road. Now, we do have the Constellation class. I'll talk about that in a few in the next in the 2 podcasts from now. But the Constellation class won't be online until the middle to end of the decade. So that's a new platform that still has to be tested and tried and all those good things. But that platform, although it's based off of an existing uh, platform, it still has its own nuances. And so I want to make sure that we have Arleigh Burkes that are available. We've got them all. We got 40 or 50 platforms that are up and going, and we're building another 10, 15, 20. Let's look at our numbers here. We have another 15 or 20 that they're in varying stages of completion. So the Arleigh Burke is a place to go. And we don't need to cut that back. We don't need to downsize. We don't need to slow down. We need to actually speed up and increase and go from there. So let's talk really quickly about, not quickly, I want to slow down a little bit. Let's talk about some of the missions of the Arleigh Burke. So the Arleigh Burkes, they have about 350, 360 personnel on board. And let's talk a little bit about how how we're using them globally. Now, the Arleigh Burke carries the SM-3. The SM-3 is an anti-missile surface-to-air missile. So it's designed to destroy ballistic missiles. And so that plugs into the Ballistic Missile Defense Office operation, and all the data comes in, and you can launch it from and launch the surface-air missile, and you can destroy incoming ballistic missile. So the warhead it goes up in space, has infrared, and it kinetically destroys the incoming ballistic missile. Not hypersonic, but incoming ballistic missile. Okay, so the Aegis system, which is the a phased array system that's used for our nation's Navy. It was developed for the Navy. That system also works off of ground-based radar information, and also works off of sea-based information. And the missile is fired to that intercept point and destroys the missile. Okay, we deployed 2 divisions of 5 destroyers. One's out of Rota, Spain, and the other one is out of Yokosuka in Japan. Now, let's talk through that. The reason there are 5, because the divisions all come in groups of, the destroyers come in groups of 5. So that means you always can have one deployed. I think they do circuits, or they do orbits. They are deployed in the waters off of Japan. They're deployed in the waters off of Spain, and they are there to respond to missiles being fired at Europe and missiles being fired at our friends and allies in Asia. Okay, where would the missiles be coming from? Well, those platforms are for missiles that are fired from Iran going towards Europe, so we can intercept them. Or those missiles are used to fire at missiles coming from North Korea. So that's what those 2 platforms are for. That's why those 5 the 5 ships are there to deploy. So you have a constant 24-hour coverage. You have 1 or 2 deployed at all times, and the other 3 are in rotations. So that's that right off the bat. There are 10 destroyers that are stuck, or that are set in a static manner right there off in Rota, in Spain, and also in Japan. That they're not out chasing submarines. They're not out waving the flag. They're not out doing other things. They have a very specific mission. Okay, so that's just one example of the mission that the Arleigh Burkes have. Now, then you have other Arleigh Burkes that are for individual missions to show the flag or to support our friends and allies. Then you have other Arleigh Burkes that go and go with our carrier strike groups. So they two go along with our carrier all the time. So you always are looking at a situation where the DDG 51 is always busy, it's always on the move, which means, quite honestly, there's no reason why we should be calculating on not having a high number produced, because we have plenty of capacity that we need to use for those platforms for the next 10, 20 years. That being said, I propose that we push for 3 per year so that we can assure that we have a good supply going, that we are able to meet our national defense needs globally, and that we can expand into areas that may pop up with emergencies, whether it's the Persian Gulf, whether it's Russia, whether it's in the Black Sea, different types of areas, or whether it's in the Indo-Pacific. So we have to have multiple platforms, or numerous enough platforms to be able to address whatever needs we have that come up globally. Cutting back is not the answer. Dumbing down what we have is not the answer, but providing more platforms, that's the answer. How much does that cost? Well, the ships cost about 1.2 billion dollars each. So the key would be to buy them in block purchases. So say we want to buy a block of 10 platforms, and that would be about $14 billion for 10. And then you know for sure that we're producing, that we'll have the orders for 10 Arleigh Burkes for the next 5-10 years, 5-7 years. That's kind of what I'm proposing. We're building one, and kind of iffy at 2 per year, but we want to make that solid that we're building 3 per year. So that's 15 ships that you have over the next 7-8 years, and that'll only enhance and make our defense stronger. So let me talk really quickly about the Arleigh Burke comes in 3 different classes. It has 3 different blocks, rather. We have Block 1, Block 2. The one that we're developing and building out now are Block 3s. They have the air missile defense, AMDR, air and missile defense radars on them, and those have a range, I guess, about 250 miles, and they're able to track missiles and be able to intercept those missiles coming inbound. They also have the SM2, which has a range about the SM2 has a range of about, I think, 35 miles. It's a short range or medium range surface air missile. Of course, we talked about the SM3 that has a range of about 200, 400 miles for anti-missile. But then there's the SM6, which has dual capability. The SM6 has a speed of about Mach 3.5 and Mach 3.5, Mach 4, and it has a payload of about 200 pounds. But the SM6 can be used for surface to air, meaning to intercept aircraft. It can be used for surface anti-missiles. It can destroy missiles coming inbound, and it also can be used for surface or surface to surface, AS, anti-surface capability, which means you can fire the SM6, and it has a range of about 200 miles, and going Mach 3, Mach 3.5, Mach 4, and it can be used. It can put plenty of big holes in any surface ship that any adversary we have. And that platform is a fast platform that you can use to destroy and incapacitate enemy surface combatants. Now, the DDG 51 also carries a Harpoon missile, which is being replaced with an NSM as a naval strike missile, and a naval strike missile that has a range of about 80-90 miles. So that's a new, it's kind of a stealth platform that it can't be seen. They use artificial intelligence for ability for tracking surface platforms, and it has ability to go in stealthily to intercept ships or destroy ships. But it only has a range of 80-90 miles, which is really short. But it works. I'm not an advocate of it being deployed on our main surface ships. I think we should use the LRASM, which is a long-range anti-ship missile, in block. I think it's the 1.1 that has the capability and has a range of about 250 miles. So I think that's more appropriate to be deployed on the ships. They're very proficient platforms as well. So the DDGV also carries the anti-submarine or anti-submarine torpedoes. And so those are, every destroyer carries anti-submarine torpedoes. So the platform is very versatile. It's very robust, and it is the workhorse of the fleet. I think that the only plan that we should have is building more of those platforms. The only plan that we should have is to make sure that our workforce and our defense contractors are fully capable, fully engaged over the next decade. And to do that, we need to keep them busy with orders, and having block orders for DDG 51s is the way to go. I appreciate you once again for this day and you spending time with me. Hey, go out there and have a great day.